Ford Bronco and Jeep Wrangler have been duking it out since 1966. And in this video, we're going to go over the two vehicles that they currently bring to the table. And for context, I've got a lot of history with both of these vehicles. In fact, the very first vehicle that I ever drove as a manual transmission was a Jeep Wrangler back in 1987. Or it wasn't in 1987, it was a 1987 model. Okay.
I was about to say, were you driving it through?
The very first vehicle I ever drove as a manual transmission was a 1987 Jeep Wrangler, but I've got a ton of history for the Ford Bronco as a Ford dealership myself. I want to take a look and show you the Jeep Wrangler first. This is the 2024 Jeep Wrangler S. This is the least expensive Jeep Wrangler we were able to get our hands on for this particular video. And a fun fact for you, this is a direct response of Ford Motor Company updating their Bronco back in, was it 2023, with a couple of updates that I'm going to cover a little bit later in this video. And then also Ford's got some really cool updates for the 2025 model year as well. But up front, you can see you've got your iconic Jeep grille where it's got the up and down vertical grille. I think it looks fine. It looks exactly the same. The big problem with this grille is it's very difficult to identify what year model a Jeep is unless you're a Jeep enthusiast. So realistically, they all kind of look the same. But then again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They've had this overall look for quite some time. Up front, you're gonna notice you have a completely plastic front grille. When you compare that to a metal front bumper, I said grill, that's not a grill, that's a bumper. Both of these are bumpers. This one's plastic, that one's metal. I think that's a big improvement, especially if you're gonna be off-roading the vehicle and you need to nudge something. It's a little bit extra protection if you want to. You also notice that this bumper comes all the way out, and you do have halogen headlights as well as the fog lights as well. Nice big fancy fenders, flares. There's not a whole lot going on. It just looks a little bit basic for me, but then again, that's what this is. This is the base version of the Jeep Wrangler. Coming around to the side, you can see a couple of different things. Obviously, you got your exterior hinges, which are kind of nice because you have easy access to get the doors on and off. The big problem I don't like about the Jeep is that if you take the doors off, you have a whole lot of extra space right here that you have to manage as far as I'm concerned. But on the Ford Bronco, if you actually roll the windows down, you're gonna see that these windows are completely frameless. So you roll the window down and you have a much more compact door to take off compared to the Jeep. As far as the wheels and tires are concerned, this truck is not equipped with any kind of a off-road package. And so you're gonna get a small set of wheels and tires, 245/75 R17. That means the wheel inside of it is a 17-inch wheel. If you go with a different trim level and if you option it, you can get all the way up to an 18 on the Jeep Wrangler. But one thing I want to point out to you is back here, you've got the gas cap, which is located right here. Why is it exposed? Ow! I just think it would look significantly better if they had a cap door to cover up the actual gas cap. On the back of both of these vehicles, you're going to pick up full-size spares in every situation, and the hatches are going to work almost identical. You open up the hatch so you can open up the glass. This Jeep has the optional hardtop, and you'll notice it's a three-piece hardtop. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of sliding. I'm trying to find a place to hold on. There we go. Let me just lean up against the door. So this hardtop is a three-piece, which I think is a terrible design in my personal opinion. Number one, I'm a big soft top fan. If you didn't know that, I have a Ford Bronco Raptor on 40s, and I sold my hardtop and got a soft top because I love them that much. Anyways, this hardtop is even worse than the Ford Broncos, and let me tell you what I mean by that. It's only a three-piece. You only have a hardtop panel here, a hardtop panel here, and then the entire rear clamshell out back. The problem with this design is, what if your backseat passengers want to actually go with a roof off type of a situation? Well, you have to bring off the entire hardtop to give them access to the sky. In the Ford Bronco, at least it's a 4-panel hardtop where you have 2 in the front, you have 1 for the second row passengers, and then you have the clamshell. That is a much better design in my opinion. The Jeep Wrangler does come with some driver assist technologies out of the box. One of these is going to be the camera located in the windshield. The beautiful thing about that is it's looking for cars in front of you, and it can actually automatically apply the brakes if it thinks you're about to get in an accident. Guess what? The Bronco's got that too, which is awesome. But there's one thing this Jeep will never have, and that is called lane keeping assist. And that is because of this, the solid front axle. See, the problem with a solid front axle, there's actually some benefits to it as well, but the solid front axle does have a little bit more play in the front end when you're driving down the interstate. And I believe that it's also much more difficult to get the computer systems to steer it properly in the lane because of that solid front axle. Now, I will say that a solid front axle is significantly easier to lift than an independent front suspension, but the Bronco is not exactly difficult to lift. And let me show you what I mean. And here is the beefed up front suspension of the Ford Bronco. Now, the beautiful thing about this particular truck, and full disclosure, we're gonna talk about 24 and 25 since the 25s are right on the horizon, but this happens to be a 2024 Black Diamond with the Sasquatch package. And it also happens to be a manual transmission, you know, going the way of the dodo bird, but Ford at least has still got it. By the way, Jeep does too, but it's so nice that Ford is still giving us the ability to go with a manual transmission if that's something you want to do. But what you're noticing here, this is an independent front suspension, and it is a very versatile version of the independent front suspension. One of the biggest differences between this and a stock standard suspension on the Bronco are going to be the Bilstein shocks. Those lower control arms, the upper control arms, you even have the steering knuckle is all going to be the same between the non-Sasquatch and the Sasquatch version. And if you really want to go crazy with this thing, like a FabTech coilover lift kit that I had on my Bronco, you replace the entire spring with the FabTech coilover, you upgrade the upper control arm, and that's it. You don't have to relocate the front differential, and you still maintain some of that high-speed off-road ability, but you also can get some flex out of these vehicles as well. But the biggest difference you're gonna find in this independent front suspension compared to that solid front axle is significantly improved highway driving. You're not gonna be floating all over the interstate because of that independent front suspension. Even though I learned to drive a manual transmission on a Jeep, I am very much biased towards the Bronco, and I'll tell you a couple of different reasons. Number one, my very first vehicle that I ever bought was a '95 Ford Bronco, and I'm lucky enough to say that I still have it today. In addition to that, I have had 3 more Broncos, and now I'm on my third 6th generation Bronco, which is my 2023 Bronco Raptor on 40s. So I've got a lot to say, and I can give you more insight on this particular vehicle. So one of the things I love about this Bronco is this right here, the trail sights. These actually serve multiple purposes. Number one, if you put a canoe on the top of the vehicle, you can actually tie it down using these. In fact, I think there's a 150-pound load capacity, and I was just checking it, and yes, there is a 150-pound load capacity on these trail sights. But did you know that they are also serving a function for off-roading? These located right here are the perfect inside of where the tire is. So that way you always know where your tire placement is going to be when you're rock crawling in the vehicle. And it just looks kind of cool, and it looks kind of retro. You'll also notice that the retro front grille looks really nice. You've got the molded in color black plastic grille that kind of matches this steel bumper just about perfectly. But one of my favorite features of the Ford Bronco, we've already talked about the doors and how easy they are to remove. But did you know that on the Bronco, when you remove the doors, guess what? The mirrors don't go with them. That is one of the key features that I love, taking the doors off my Bronco Raptor, putting the tube doors on, I can still see what's behind me. When you take the doors off the Jeep, the mirrors go with it. Jeep also has tie-down points on the hood as well. The downside to these are they're not located where you can actually spot where your tires are going to be placed for off-roading. But the other benefit these particular things serve is that when you lay your windshield down, it has something to rest here. Now, as a side note, I would love to know, if you're a Jeep Wrangler owner, how many of you have actually driven around with your windshield laid down? Another thing I love about the Bronco is the modularity all the way around, especially with these fender flares. Some of you OGs probably know this, but there are tabs located inside this fender flare. Then, if you're gonna go off-roading and you wanna save them, keep them from getting damaged, all you have to do is pull them straight off. No tools required. Next up, let's talk about the trim level that this Bronco is. This one is a black diamond because, as I've mentioned to you earlier, this is a 2024 model year. If you look at the 2025 model year, Ford is changing things around when it comes to the Black Diamond package because it's no longer a trim level and it's now considered an off-road package on the Big Bend series. And by the way, if you want to see a video that breaks down all of the nitty-gritty, the packages, the orderable configurations, all of that kind of stuff on the Bronco, I will have that linked for you right there. Make sure to click on that video if that's something you're interested in. Or if you just want to place your Bronco order at invoice pricing automatically, give us a call. That phone number is right there on the screen. But I think it is nice that they are simplifying the entire packages for the 2025 Bronco. And they're also bringing back the base model of the Ford Bronco. The unfortunate thing though is those are going to be very limited and apparently hard to get because Ford only wants to build so many of them. They just can't build all of those Broncos as base models because I'm guessing that there might be a parts constraint, or maybe they just want to make more money on the higher trim levels. As far as the wheels and tires are concerned, the Sasquatch package comes with a set of 35-inch tires. Not quite 35s, but if you round up, they're 35-inch Goodyear tires. For 2025, they're still going to be Goodyears, but it's going to be a new tread pattern introduced for the 25 Ford Bronco. These wheels are 17-inch wheels, and because of the Sasquatch package, they are now going to be beadlock capable, meaning that they are not beadlock wheels, they are normal wheels, but you see this ring on the outside? You can actually unbolt this, buy a conversion package through your local Ford dealership, flip the bead to the outside, and actually turn this into a beadlock wheel. Keep in mind, if you do that, it's not DOT approved, and it's for off-road use only. Another feature I love about the Ford Bronco is the global windows, where if you tap and hold that button, the windows will automatically roll down for you to air out the vehicle if it's extremely hot outside. But the other thing that I like that for is it gives you quick and easy access to the latch to drop that soft top. And speaking of soft top, let me show you why I'm such a fan of the soft top. You've got those two latches in the front, then you can lift this soft top all the way back, and now everybody in the vehicle has a clear view of the sky. It's so easy, you don't have to store any panels. Yes, there's a time and a place for a hardtop, but if you bought a Bronco for the same reason that I did, because you want to go as convertible as much as you possibly can, this soft top is something you want in your arsenal. Now it's time to drive both of these vehicles, starting off with the manual transmission Ford Bronco. But before we go into our driving impressions of the vehicle, one of my favorite things about this manual transmission is it has a crawl gear, which also duplicates as a start in gear function. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to cut the truck off for a quick second, open the door to cycle everything. Then what I want to do is I want to come in here. I'm going to put the e-brake on because I'm on a hill. But let's say I'm going to turn the accessory to on. I'm not going to actually crank the vehicle. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the e-brake off, and if the vehicle's battery is completely dead, I can still come over here, put it in the crawl mode, and I can get rolling. And then all I have to do is dump the clutch, and the car will start itself even with a dead battery. There you go. That is how you start this vehicle with having a dead battery. One of the more unfortunate things about this transmission is it's only available with the 2.3 liter 4-cylinder EcoBoost, but it is not a slouch. It actually has some pretty decent pickup. And the way that I can tell you that or prove that to you is this is the same engine and transmission basically that Ford has given us in the Mustang EcoBoost. This is the same engine and transmission Ford has given us in the Ford Focus RS. You know, that race rocket Ford Focus? That one. This is a very peppy engine and transmission combination, and that is largely in part to the 4.7 gear ratio that you get because of that Sasquatch package. Sometimes it's not just about the engine or the horsepower, sometimes it's also about having the proper gearing to do what you need to do. And although I am on a windy road, you can very easily tell that when I finally find a straight piece of road, I can let go of the steering wheel and the vehicle on 35s tracks perfectly straight. By the way, the same is true on my Bronco Raptor on 40s. Try that in a Jeep. No, you're constantly doing this just to stay in the middle of the road. Independent front suspension is the best suspension, in my opinion, for like 90% of the Bronco slash Jeep owners because they spend so much time on the road. You might be able to hear there's a little bit more wind noise with the soft top. But then again, I hear people say that I want the hard top because it's going to be so much quieter than the soft top. And that sometimes is just simply not the case. Anytime you have a top that is designed to be removed without a blowtorch or a sawzall or a plasma cutter, guess what? There's going to be air gaps. There's going to be some wind noise. There's going to be some issues with that hardtop long term. If you're looking for something quiet, you need to be looking at something like a Toyota 4Runner or a Ford Explorer or one of those types of vehicles that has a fixed roof on it. One of my favorite features of the Ford Bronco, especially in a manual transmission, is something called Hill Start Assist. So as I come to a complete stop on this very steep hill, I'm worried about rolling backwards. It actually gives me a quick second to be able to get my foot off the brake and onto the gas, so that way I'm not rolling behind me into the car behind me. It's a really nice feature to keep you stable and still while you are working out the brake, the gas, and the clutch. It is really something for, really, if you're new to driving a manual transmission, this is going to be the one to go with, especially because of that Hill Start Assist. I hate to tell you this, but I already knew what my driving impressions of this vehicle were going to be before making this video because I've been in so many Broncos. I've got well over 100,000 miles behind the wheel of a 6th generation Bronco, and really the only difference is the manual transmission, which I've already had a chance to drive. Even at the Bronco Off-Rodeo, they had a manual transmission for me to drive. By the way, if you buy a Ford Bronco, you get automatically a free pass to the Bronco Off-Rodeo where they teach you things about your Bronco that you would never believe is actually capable. And it's free when you buy the Bronco brand new. And I highly recommend that you do that. I know a lot of the guys there, they're great people and really just a world-class organization that the Ford gives that to you for free. So make sure you tell them that Mitchell sent you if you do end up going. By the way, I don't get a penny off of that, or I don't get any sponsorship or anything like that. They're just good people and they have a great program. Now it's time not to launch it, but let's just see what kind of pickup we got. Now, keep in mind, this is not supposed to be a race car, but it's not bad if you like banging through gears. But I'll tell you that I had one person, as we were preparing for this video, they said, why would you want to drive a manual transmission? It makes it harder to drive it. Why would anybody want to do that? And I had a really good analogy for them. This person was a female, so she likes to go clothes shopping and things like that. And I told her, I said, you do realize that, I like having nice new clothes to wear too. But if I can buy them offline and save myself the time and the hassle, I'm going to do that 100% of the time. Tell me, why do you like to go into the store, touch it, feel it, experience it? It's the same thing with the manual transmission. Every time I get in a manual transmission vehicle, I think about that time where my dad taught me how to drive a manual transmission for the first time. It's not just making it more difficult to drive. It's actually about experiencing the drive. And speaking of experiencing the drive, I think it's now time to swap out and see what that Jeep Wrangler is all about. So right off the bat, the Jeep Wrangler is actually very familiar compared to the Ford Bronco. A lot of similarities, a lot of buttons are laid out in a similar area. And even for 2024, Jeep has upgraded their infotainment system to match that of the standard now 12-inch screen in the Ford Bronco. Now this one has a much more vertical layout, whereas the Bronco has a little bit more height to it, but they are the same exact size when you measure diagonally. I will say that there is a little bit more action with the steering wheel going back and forth, but it's not nearly as bad as I had expected it because the Jeeps I've driven in the past are lifted on 35s or 37-inch tires. Those are obviously going to make the sway in the road a whole lot worse. Once again, easier to lift, harder to drive. But the benefit of that solid front axle does mean more articulation if you are a rock crawler. So if you plan on doing some extreme levels of rock crawling, the Jeep Wrangler is the way to go. If you plan on doing 90 or 95% of your time on the road, the Bronco is the way to go. While I'm at this stoplight, I do want to point out a couple of things that I love about the interior on the Jeep. I do like the location of the windows where you roll them up and roll them down. They're moved onto the dashboard, whereas the Bronco has got them up here up against the center console. Both have got their benefits and their pluses, but I do like being able to see the window switches without having to do this number to actually see them. The other thing that I like is the actual transfer case is a physical transfer case where you actually force it into 4 high, 4 low, and then also neutral. Now that we're going to accelerate up this steep hill, let's see what kind of horsepower and torque this thing has actually got. Not bad. This little engine is not too shabby at all. It seems, according to my butt dyno, it seems like it feels like it's got similar horsepower and torque, but I don't have them memorized across both vehicles, so I'll put those right there on the screen. But they feel very comparable in both of these vehicles. One thing I love about this Jeep is it actually has a lower MSRP than the Bronco we just got through driving. But you also pick up adaptive cruise control, which is not found in that black diamond that we just got through driving. I love adaptive cruise control. I just wish that this one also had that lane centering or lane keeping assist. So overall, what are my favorite things about the Jeep? What do I love about the Jeep? Number one, I love the solid front axle and the ease to lift it because, as you guys know, TC Customs, we love everything that has been customized. The downside to that solid front axle is that it's not going to be nearly as daily driver friendly. A couple of other things that I love about the Jeep, I mean, it is less expensive, so that is obviously a plus, but Ford does have some pretty significant incentives on the Broncos, especially 2024s. And if you want a 2025, you can order them at invoice pricing just by calling that number on the screen. At the end of the day, do I hate the Jeep Wrangler? No, I don't. I do think that the Ford Bronco is a little bit better in all of the different categories, which makes it a better vehicle significantly overall. But at the end of the day, that every person is a different need set, meaning that what works for me may not work for you. That's the reason that I love the soft top and other people love a hard top. Everybody wants something different for their particular case use. And with that being said, I genuinely want to know what your thoughts are. Do you like the Jeep Wrangler at the lower price point, or do you like the bigger tires and a little bit better execution on the Bronco for a little bit extra money? Thanks so much for watching this video, and have a great day. Peace.